Putting an offer in on a house is not like going to the store and buying a loaf of bread. There are multiple things to consider. Emotions can sometimes take the lead, and that's why it helps to be level-headed.
Any response is a good response. You got to be prepared for no. Please never take it personally. If somebody wants your house, they're not trying to offend you. They're just operating within the parameters that they think they're able to or should. Right? And our job is to let them know, let's not have a response. Let's look at this objectively. And it's not where you start when you negotiate, but where you finish. You're married, Jeff, right?
Yeah.
You ever get off on the wrong foot?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well,
daily.
yeah. Okay, so you're going to be a great real estate agent.
Real estate transactions are like snowflakes, and you need a rational team that understands the needs of both sides of the transaction.
What might be more important to me even than price might be some of the terms. Like, can I stay in my house a little longer than the close of escrow? Some of the things that are important to me might be different than important to another seller. So I think it's important upon the agent to find out exactly, in addition to price, James, what else is important to you in terms of this transaction.
It doesn't matter if you're thinking about buying or selling next month or 5 years from now. This episode of the SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast is one you need to listen and file it away in your memory bank for when it's time to make that important decision. Let's get into it. Here's your host, Team Sweasey member, James Bueno.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hal Sweasey podcast. As always, we have Mr. Sweasey with us. Hal, welcome.
Thank you, James.
As well as JT, Mr. John Turner.
Hey, good to be here.
And a special guest today, one of our awesome buyer's agents, Mr. Jordan Knauer. Does he get a round of applause like Sharon did? Or
Oh, yeah.
Round of applause?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you, James. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited.
We are excited that you're here, Jordan. All right, so today we're talking about writing offers. How do we be competitive when writing an offer? Mr. Sweasey, why don't you start us off?
I think there's so many things that go into writing a competitive offer. Price is really important, but I know, for example, Jordan is very good at counseling his clients on what the environment we're bidding in. Meaning, do we have 3 offers or 2 or 1? So, Jordan, what kind of questions are you normally asking maybe an agent representing a seller when you have a buyer that wants a property?
Being competitive in this market is tricky, and there's quite a few questions that I like to ask listing agents and sellers prior to submitting an offer for my buyer. One of the first is how many offers are in, because if there's 1 offer in versus 10 offers, it changes the landscape and dynamic on maybe how we decide to present an offer to the listing agent.
So, Jordan, I have a question for you. Is there ever a time where a listing agent will not tell you how many offers are in?
Sometimes they'll be a little bit, sometimes they won't be as forthcoming with, telling me exactly how many offers. But, if you pry a little bit more and really try to talk with them and get to know them a little bit, a lot of the times you will find that they will relinquish enough information. Besides offers that are in, something that's really important is, what's important to the sellers, right? Understanding their time frames, understanding how long they want escrow, how much they want for a deposit.
So, Hal, you're the expert here. You've been doing this a long time. What would you say that you need to do to be competitive? What's going to give me, the buyer, an edge writing an offer?
Well, yeah, kind of piggybacking on what Jordan said, finding out what the hot buttons are for a seller, what's important in terms of timing and et cetera. And then I think also, finding out what is important. When you find that out, you can kind of structure your offer that way. I got to say, too, having a little bit of a track record. So, for example, like I represent a lot of sellers, and when I get an agent from out of the area that I don't know, then if I'm looking at 2 offers, it's nice to know someone working on the other side that you're trying to put this together with. You have a track record with them, right? They have a reputation. You've done business with them before. When the going gets tough, they're not going to panic. So just knowing that someone on the other side is a solid, respectful, performer makes a big difference. And then there's just little tiny things, just in terms of, hey, how strong is your pre-qual letter? Do we have the lender call in advance and say, hey, you're looking at an offer from this buyer, I've got them pre-approved. They are great buyers. So that is a good validation for a listing agent to share with the seller.
Does a cash buyer have an advantage?
Cash is easier than financing. And a lot of buyers, if they do their homework with the right lender, even though they're getting a loan, they do not have to make that a contingency. The lender might go, no, they're fully approved. In fact, We've looked online at the property. We don't even need an appraisal. That can happen. So now you are competing with terms a cash buyer. So it simplifies it and makes you super competitive when it comes to a cash buyer. Now, it's not just money always, too. I mean, we talk about this.
Right.
We talk about terms. And you can only share so much, but having a sense, some people might live close to the property and they might want to know who their neighbors are going to be, and having a little background on, who the buyers are. Okay. And that's a sensitive subject, but we're all people.
Right. JT,
Yeah.
So you've actually been through the process with Hal. What have you seen Hal do that, help you buy a property?
Well, I think the first thing that he's done with me when I was a seller is to ask me what's important to me. And I think that's Jordan was kind of talking about that before. I think the most important question in any negotiation is what's important to the people involved in the sale or service of the product. And so as a seller, what might be more important to me even than price might be some of the terms, like, can I stay in my house a little longer than the close of escrow? Some of the things that are important to me might be different than important to another seller. So I think it's important upon the agent to find out exactly, in addition to price, James, what else is important to you in terms of this transaction.
So, Hal, it's not always who's bringing the most money to the table. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just want to know that a lot of people don't want to start over. A lot of people have a smooth transaction because the escrow period, a lot of things can occur before you get to a closing. So having that sense of security means a lot to a lot of people. Nobody really wants to start over when it comes to that.
So, Jordan, what's an escalation clause?
I actually myself like to use escalation clauses a lot. I think they can be an effective measure in a competitive market and helping a buyer, secure a piece of property. Say for example, you have a house that's worth $1 million. It's on the market for $1 million. And as the buyer's agent myself, I talk to the listing agent and find out that there's 10 offers that are on the table. And I want to be competitive, but I also want to take into consideration, my buyer's wants and needs. And a lot of the times that means not overpaying in this market. So an escalation clause would be coming in at $1 million, but putting a cap on it. So $1 million is the offer, saying that the cap would be $1.5 million, and you can pay in increments up to that threshold. So if there were to be, our offer is $1 million up to 1.5 in $10,000 increments. If someone else wrote an offer at $1.3 million, effectively and that was the highest offer. Effectively, our offer would be $1,310,000. Does that make sense?
It does. It's like bidding, right? It's on eBay. If somebody bids underneath you, you keep winning until it gets to your highest point bid, right?
Exactly. And so in that scenario, 1.5 would have been the client's max scenario. They really, really want the house, but if they could get it for 1.3 or 1.4, and didn't have to pay a 1.5, that is a big win for that buyer.
So just being the idiot in the room, I have to ask this question. So let's say in that situation, you give me an escalation clause that says 1.5. Why wouldn't a counter come back at 1.5?
Here's the one little nuance, too, in the language that Jordan and we write in our contracts. We'll bid higher than the next highest bidder by $10,000, as an example. So if they get an offer for 1.1, we'll say, hey, we'll pay 1.1 plus 10,000. And if they pay 1.150, we'll pay 1.150 plus 10,000. But we're going to stop at 1.5.
Gotcha.
So you got to show us that somebody else is willing to pay. So you're in an auction, and just don't go from $1 million to $1.5 million. If somebody else offers $1.1 million, you go, great, I'll raise it by $10,000.
So it's written in there in increments. That's how it's going to work.
It's written in there. Hey, we'll pay this much over the next highest offer, and you got to show it to us.
Let's say there's a house on the market. It's been on there for 30 days at $1 million. The famous lowball effect. Is that going to affect? Let's say you come in, you see $1 million property, and you want an offer $850.
Mm-hmm.
How does that affect me buying that house?
Yeah. I think when it comes to real estate interactions, it might be a little bit like what I see sometimes in legal situations where attorneys aren't in court, but they're talking in advance. So that might be like the example Jordan gave. We call the agent, go, hey, I know you're $1 million. You've been on the market for, 30 days. Have you had any offers? They say no. Okay. Well, gosh, if my client want to write an offer for $850, what do you think would happen? And that agent might go, no way, no how. Or they might go, maybe at $900,000. Well, that's a nice little gem, if they're authorized to say that to us. So, okay, so we can tell our buyer, so you might be able to get it for $900,000, which in this market would be a huge win, right? So it's asking questions, it's reading between the lines, and sometimes we do a little verbally and just kind of test and banter around to see where is that real figure at. Because it really, if that seller says, I want $1 million, but hey, if you get me $900,000, they might be happy. Well, an agent can only do that if they're authorized to say, hey, bring me something around 9 and we're going to be talking. Okay, so it's just all a conversation. It's all a little bit of digging.
So do you come across any agents that just email you an offer, shoot you an offer for $200,000 less? Do you ever come without them communicating with you?
Yeah, no. Sometimes that happens, right? Yeah, and it's again, then to me, that's really just not doing their job. You need, when you present something to someone, you want to tell them all the benefits, what's up, why it's justified, and then you probably want to do a little bit of homework. It's just like sending a note to someone in your dating and you just go, hey, you want to go out, without asking him anything. It's probably not a good idea. Okay. I would know because I haven't been on a date for years. But
you want to make sure that you get an agent supporting you and communicating. It's okay to offer less as long as it's communicated, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, some people expect to receive a lower offer. It's just all about finding out where someone stands. Our job is to really ask good questions. A good doctor is going to ask you really good questions about your health. Right? A good attorney is going to ask you good questions about what are you hoping to accomplish, what's transpired, and where do we want to go with this thing. And it's all about asking the right questions.
Right. Do you ever run across a seller? I mean, I know you do a lot of listings. So do you ever run across a seller that is offended by such practice? Like if you were to offer $100,000 less and they had it at $1 million for a month, and how do you handle that?
You don't have to be a seller to be offended. You have to be human. So buyers and sellers can get offended. We had a transaction recently where the clients made a request during escrow, not before we made an offer, and it was a very large reduction based on condition. And the sellers were, no, I don't think so. So the buyer was like, well, it's you've got to do this. Well, they don't really have to, right? So we have to counsel and coach them on that, and we try to just look at it as like any response is a good response. You got to be prepared for no, and please never take it personally. Okay, if somebody wants your house, they're not trying to offend you. They're just operating within the parameters that they think they're able to or should. Right. And our job is to let them know. Let's not have a response. Okay. Let's look at this objectively. And it's not where you start when you negotiate, but where you finish. So let's not get off on the wrong foot, right? You're married, Jeff, right?
Yeah.
You ever get off on the wrong foot?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well,
daily.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to be a great real estate agent.
How do you be competitive? So we talked about price. Pricing's got to be right. We talked about escalation clauses. I'm sure obviously that helps out. What else do you guys do that you're willing to talk about that just help you guys? You guys sell a lot of houses, and how do you do it?
I think something that's been really helpful as well is building rapport with other agents in the business. I think if you can build some sort of good and or personal relationship with an agent, and they understand kind of where you're coming from, and you know where they're coming from, and you guys are trying to meet and achieve the same objective, I think that goes a long way in getting things accepted. Obviously, price and terms, a lot of the times do come down. I mean, do determine kind of where or what happens in terms of your offer getting accepted or not. If there's a couple offers that are relatively similar, if you have a relationship with another agent, I mean, there's a good chance they might want to work with you because they understand your past history, they understand how you work, and they understand that what you say comes at face value, and that is probably going to close escrow in a relatively smooth manner versus an agent that you might not know that brings up a lot of odd components to a transaction that makes it not go smoothly. So building rapport is definitely important in terms of helping out a buyer to get a property in a competitive landscape.
But it's relationships. I mean, there's plenty of mechanics around, but you probably go to somewhere you like, you're treated well, and it's very similar in what we do, both for our customers and internally when working with other agents. Yeah, it's a really good point, Jordan. One other thing that's important, I think, probably in business, like if you look at businesses do, is acting relatively quickly. If you see a property you like, usually writing an offer sooner rather than later and being the one that gets your offer accepted makes a difference. A lot of people don't want to wait a long time to find out, is the buyer going to get their loan? Are they going to do that? Do we have an offer? So if you can keep things moving along, you don't lose momentum. And just think about it. If you get a medical test done and you're waiting for the results, the longer you wait, are you thinking, oh, it must be great, or you start to worry? So human nature is to worry. So if we can keep things moving forward more quickly, it's going to make the situation smoother and make all parties feel better.
And I guess, last thing to touch on that, I guess, while we're here, how you touched on, communication between, buyer's agents and listing agents as well. I mean, I cannot emphasize enough how important communication between the buyer and the buyer's agent is, or the seller and the seller's agent. Because if me as a buyer's agent, can really understand every component of what the buyer is looking for in a quick amount of time, understand any things that might hold them back, properties they have to sell to buy, anything like that, the more information I have up front, and that communication will allow us to be able to act a lot quicker and allow us to be able to, submit an offer in a timely manner and get it accepted.
Gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate it. And until next time.
All right. Thanks, James. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you for listening to the How Sweasey podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast. It comes out every Monday, so check for it in your feed for the latest information on the San Luis Obispo County market. The SLO County Real Estate with How Sweasey podcast is available wherever you get your podcast and on howsweasey.com, where you can find current listings and other real estate tips. Howsweasey.com, that's HALSWEASEY.com. I am James Bueno, Director of Marketing for the How Sweasey Group. If you're looking for anything real estate, give us a call, 805-781-3750.
Hal Sweasey is a licensed California real estate broker. DRE number 01111-911. The SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast is a production of AGM Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.